And it's interesting how much your senses come alive when you release this stuff, because it's like you're holding one foot on the brake as you're trying to accelerate, and it's like you just pull your foot off the brake.
As humans, we experience a wide range of crazy emotions, and these emotions can come up during challenging times that seem to hit us out of nowhere. That's the purpose of this podcast, to teach you how to move through these difficult situations and harness these emotions that we feel to be able to create the life that you want. My name's Nathaniel Burke, and I'm the host of the Emotional Fitness Podcast. I hope you enjoy. Well, Brody, thanks for being on the show, man. I'm super glad we finally were able to connect and do this. To be honest, it's been a while. A long time in the making, and as you said before in our messages, when the right time came, it would, and I think we're here now.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for being on the show. Maybe you want to introduce yourself and what you're doing right now and some of the work that you've done in the past, and let's explore that and what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. I am a man of many skills. I'm a Red Seal carpenter by trade, but I work at the gym as a personal trainer as well. So I've kind of lived two lives in that aspect. And I really noticed with construction, there's a lot of guys that are, I like to say, unconscious, where they're just operating in the system where they were raised in. There's lots of behavior that's not emotionally intelligent, and I just realized that I was surrounded by a lot of people in that environment that I didn't want to be a part of that energy, just constant swearing and smoking and drinking, and it seems like the trades attract a lot of guys like that, and so I was hesitant to get into kind of doing my work, my inner work, but now I just show up as authentic as I can, and no matter what situation or environment I'm in. I'm do construction, do personal training, and
that's awesome.
I also do some coaching on the side of the building, so I work with people in that aspect.
I love that.
Helping them with physical and mental and emotional health.
It's so needed, and I really wanted to have you on the show because when we first talked, you were talking about some of the work you've done and the work you're doing now and really where you're seeing the benefits. So maybe you want to share a little bit about what some of different avenues you've explored to work on your own journey, your own emotional healing journey and your emotional journey. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. It's been a journey for sure. I've really been prioritizing this inner work, the shadow work that they point at for almost 3 years now. I've always been on the path of personal development. Ever since I was in high school, I've always gravitated towards that idea of just being better and accepting responsibility for your life and all that kind of stuff. My journey with that kind of work, it always starts with a hardship that you go through. I find for a lot of men, it's not until you're kind of in that rock bottom when you start to really analyze where you're at and develop a plan on how you want to climb out, or you just stay in that rock bottom. And for a lot of guys, that's kind of what they end up doing, which is really hard. But for me, it was my grandpa's passing was what really made me have a inner look at what I had going on and start addressing my trauma and my shadow, and just understanding my ego at a deeper level. Because if you don't do this inner work, if you don't develop the self-awareness, you are kind of unconsciously going to be guided by your ego, people pleasing, trying to be this individual. It's not your true self. You're going to be setting expectations, and you're really going to take things personally. The ego really likes to have itself as the star of the show, and I was living that life, and I had no idea. But amongst that, I had developed kind of closet depression. I didn't know the state of which I was at with how I was feeling when I was by myself with nothing to do and with no distractions. I'm like, I'm not happy and I don't know what it is. And then my grandpa's passing came along and I'm like, okay, I'm really not doing well. kind of in that realm of suicidal ideation, but not wanting to die, just wanting to be alleviated from my suffering.
Right.
And so started asking myself some hard questions, and had a journey up on the mountain, just went up there, had a fire by myself, and took my journal and just went inward, and I'm like, hey, what's going on here? And I was up there for 5 or 6 hours.
Nice.
And
I love that.
It was lots of processing and lots of feeling and healing, and just kind of uncovered this childhood trauma that I didn't know I really went through, because I had repressed it so far. It was just this generational sexual trauma that I experienced, and I feel like a lot of guys don't know how to talk about that stuff.
Totally.
And so that was kind of the catalyst for my journey.
Yeah, that's a lot there. And again, thank you for sharing that. Most people don't want to talk about that stuff because it's not fun, glamorous, sexy. But the reality is, everybody's got it.
Yep.
Right? It's kind of like pooping. We all do it.
Yeah.
Right? We all have some sort of trauma of some sort.
Either capital T or little t.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, having said that, you talk about your shadow. When you refer to your shadow work, what are you referring to?
This is a question that I've had people bring up. It's like, what is shadow work? What is your shadow? I think that your shadow, a great way to reference it, it's like your ego, you have these blinders on, and it's like what's beyond the blinders is your shadow. So it's aspects of yourself that you feel really vulnerable about, that you don't want to confront. Your shame lives in your shadow, your guilt, your self-deprecating humor, the root of it is in your shadow. Your self-worth, or lack of self-worth is rooted with shadow.
Right.
So I think it's that process of going into that place where you feel naked and afraid, and you don't want to be there because it's so uncomfortable.
Right.
That's my definition of shadow.
I really like that because I think it can resonate with a lot of people. That place that you're uncomfortable, that you don't want to talk about. Yeah. And we all have it, whether it be, some people it's money, they don't like to talk about money, or sex, or relationships, or past trauma. And it can be a very slippery slope. I've seen this where the talk only becomes about the trauma, and then they get kind of stuck in that trauma loop, because then they talk about it, and when they talk about it, they feel it. When they feel it, they get that rush of cortisol, which gives them, and this is unconscious work. This is unconsciously most of the time. And they get this rush, and then that kind of feeds into it again. So there really is a healthy balance that needs to be struck with how to talk about it, when to move through it, how to move through it. And I think what you said before is taking that time to sit with it. And you did say it earlier, maybe I want to make sure it's right, is like taking that ownership, that uncomfortable ownership.
Yeah, just responsibility for all aspects of it.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's so missing, because most of the time when I hear the people that have kind of that trauma, it's a lot of times a victim thing. It's, oh, well, this happened to me, and this isn't, and this, and they, pointing fingers, versus like, if you just owned 100% of it, let's just say, and again, I don't mean to like, this isn't to like hate on somebody's experience and saying you're responsible for that car accident, no, or for that thing that happened to you, or that thing that happened.
Yeah.
But if you have that mentality, you bring your power back.
100%.
And I think that's what's missing.
Yeah.
So you've gone through that, and you can hear it in your voice and what you're talking through. So what are some of the things you've done to help you navigate that? What's some of the work?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Because you said you did the fire, talking yourself to journaling, which I was like, man. Yeah, you're hitting on something there. So what other stuff have you been doing?
Yeah, so I think it really is a multifaceted approach when it comes to trauma resolution. And I have kind of devoted my life to this at this point. I want to become more educated. I want to be able to kind of create more spaces and containers to help men feel safe to do this work. But I think the first key is just awareness. It's just realizing it. admitting that it actually is there and not being in that dissociative denial state of ego. It's like, oh no, I'm fine. That macho bravadism of just like putting on this facade because you don't want to admit that, I actually do have a wound. And so you mentioned the victim state. That's what I want to talk about, because for me, I'm sure we'll get into this later, but I'm very spiritual with how I view things, my perspective, my beliefs. I'm big on everything that happens to you, especially those big things. It happens for you, not to you. And there's a reason why kind of that was part of your karma. I really believe that before we come here, where as a soul, we have this whole blueprint. It's like, I want to learn these really hard lessons. I want to go through this crazy big trauma and learn how to process it, alchemize it, and transmute it so that it becomes my power, that it becomes my gift, and that's how I show up and serve. And so for a long time, I was in that victim mode, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, what the hell? And just really being stuck in that story. So when you become aware of it, and then you sort of become intoxicated by your story. I find that a lot of people, when they go through this trauma work, it's like, here's my name, here's my story. Your story is great because it helps you relate to people, but when you ruminate on that story, you hold the emotional charge to it. Your body's objective, your nervous system's objective. So if this is floating in your unconscious and you're projecting that, your body and your nervous system's like, oh, here we go again. We're feeling all of that.
We're back in the moment.
Exactly. So having the awareness of it is key. And then starting to kind of remove that emotional charge, I think, is the next step. So doing the necessary work to sit with that. And a lot of times the emotional charge is from this egoic self-righteousness pride that we hold of like, oh, this thing happened to me, I'm a victim, the world needs to cater to me. And like you said, it's not like, oh, this horrible car accident or, you know, the sexual assault. There's terrible things out there, and I'm not saying that I'm not validating people's experiences, but just going like, yes, this happened to me, just accepting it, removing the emotional charge. That's where the work lies. Because removing that emotional charge and going through that process of forgiveness, whether you're forgiving yourself or others, that's where being in your heart and being raw and vulnerable and accepting that responsibility comes in. So I think there's, you know, top down and bottom up approaches where talk therapy is great. People process things by talking about them, but that doesn't help your body remove that emotional charge. So doing things like meditation and breath work and journaling can be extremely powerful. For people that are more open-minded, you can do psychedelic assisted therapies, or you can do shamanic journeys with plant medicine. I think that is an amazing way to help resolve your trauma. But setting an intention and how you go into it are absolutely crucial. That's why I'm a huge advocate for breath work, like 9D transformative breath work. You know, you can sit there and do box breathing where it's in, hold, out, hold.
4x4 or the 4
Sure,
4, 4,
4, 7, 8. There's all different kinds of breath work, but doing like a holotropic or kind of, you know, a radical breathwork journey where it puts your body into a state of fight or flight, and it takes you back to that experience and allows you to transmute it in real time without saying a word. And it puts you into your heart, and it allows you to release this emotional charge. And I've had some intense breathwork journeys where I am bawling, crying so hard that I can hardly catch my breath, but you need to keep coming back to your breath. And it's like, it's such a journey. And you have an eye mask on and headphones, and it's like this whole soundscape, and there's a lot going on, but you come out of that feeling 500 pounds lighter. It feels like you've just removed the shackles of the thing that you didn't even know was holding you back. So to not carry on too far,
that's cool.
There's many modalities of therapy, and it's cool because a lot more people are talking about this stuff now than even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and especially for men. And it makes me excited to be on the path that I am, to be an advocate for doing this work, because I've been there. I know what it's like. I've wanted to take my life because I was just in such a state of hell. And you know, if you can sit and be in that hell and fully take it in and don't run away from it,
Yeah.
and look up and be compelled by a future that is greater than where you're at. Like Dr. Joe Dispenza, a lot of his work I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, he does amazing stuff.
You know, to get out of hell, you need to be driven by a vision of your own personal heaven. You know, so
something moving forward to the
totally,
future.
yeah.
You know, there was. Thank you, brother. That was I was like, wow, this is crazy. There's so many different layers there I want to dive into. You know, maybe just starting with your breathwork experience. Maybe do you want to expand on that a little bit, because I've had my own experience of like massive trauma release where no words were said, but it was through somatic therapy where I think I've talked about it multiple times on the show. You know, a therapist hand on my back, hand on my liver, and
body work.
Yeah, and it was very similar,
Yeah.
and it was essentially just like awareness and thinking of my legs, thinking of this, and back and forth, and having a very similar release where it was 45 minutes, an hour of like constant bawling, and I don't know why. Nothing was in my head.
Yeah.
But the feeling after was, 500 pounds lighter. I was noticing way more in my world. Food was tasting better. Mm-hmm. Things to touch felt different and new. So it was almost like a weird like little rebirth, if you will, like in like a small way.
Yeah.
So my question then is, during this experience, maybe talk me through how that experience went. How long did it go? Where did you learn it from? And if anybody is starting to dive into that work and you're just curious, like what breathwork, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
What is it? Maybe expand on that a little bit. Let's maybe start from like the brand new person to like, okay, here's how we can go through that process now, if you want to expand on it a little
absolutely. Before I jump into that, I just want to receive what you said about the somatic release therapy. That is so powerful. And just a quick little, I saw a video the other day, and it was talking about how people that are depressed, their world is literally dimmer. It's literally darker because the photo light receptors in their brain are dampened. So it's like that sensory perception that you have. Things are going to feel less dull. Food's not going to taste as good. You're kind of going to be more in that gloom frequency. And it's interesting how much your senses come alive when you release this stuff. Because it's like you're holding one foot on the brake as you're trying to accelerate, and it's like you just pull your foot off the brake, and it's amazing. And that's how I felt after I experienced breathwork for the first time. It's called breathwork because it is work. You have to show up, you have to put in the work. You can't just lay there and it's like you're into it. Your whole body's going through this experience. And one thing that I wanted to bring up is that your body keeps the score. When you go through these traumas, there is an imprint in your cellular memory. Your body literally holds on to this stuff. Yeah. So going through that's another modality of therapy. And for breathwork, man, it's changed my life in so many ways that I would have never even expected. So for somebody that is interested in that, I say no matter where you're at on your journey, it's going to help you in some way or another. Yeah. I would say go into it with no expectations. Yeah. Because if you go into it like, this is going to heal me, this is going to be the thing, and then if it's not, then you're disappointed and, you know, all these things. So totally. I first experienced like a proper breathwork journey through Yogi Labs. It's called 9D breathwork, and it's 9-dimensional breathwork. So there's solfeggio frequencies, binaural audio, subliminal programming, hypnosis, track. There's all this 3D sound going on. Yeah. It's crazy. Wow. And it's 90 minutes of you and the breath, and you're on the floor. You have a yoga mat. I had a blanket, box of tissues beside me. I had my sleep mask on, my headphones, pillow. Like you settle in for a journey. I
think you really hit it there. And I made this mistake a while ago because after my experience, I mentioned to a friend of the same experience I had. I was like, hey, you gotta go see this person. And so I think she came into the same expectation, like, oh, this is going to help with the stuff. And she didn't. And it was like, oh, it didn't work, this, and this. Right. And I think it was exactly that as the expectation, and that was part of my fault. And I'm gonna get the dogs here. Part of my fault is because I think I set that expectation because I just was trying to help, and I was like, man, this is amazing. It made this huge difference. It can make a difference for you. And I think she kind of went into that like, oh, this is going to change my life versus just surrendering to it. And that was at that moment when I did my work. It was like, I actually do remember that. I was like, I'm going to go into this all out.
Yeah.
Because I know it's going to help. I know it can help. I need it to help. I need to make a difference. I'm just going to commit to it 100%.
Yeah.
And just see what happens.
Just do your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's maybe a holdup is the expectations. That and
expectation is an ego. You need to surrender that ego mind to get into the flow state where your body does the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so critical and then that's tough because it takes a lot of awareness to do that. It takes a lot of awareness like, oh, why don't I do it? Oh, well, I'm fine. It's like, well, what's saying that? Who's saying that?
Yeah.
What part of you is saying that?
Yeah.
Because is there another part of you that's saying like, is that scared of it? And if so, why?
Yeah.
Why are you scared of it? Oh, I'm scared it could hurt me, whatever. Oh, well, let's listen to that voice for a little bit. Let's see what's going on. And that's part of some of the conversations I have with clients is, what are you afraid of? Oh, this. Let's talk about that because clearly there's a belief there that you think this is going to hurt you or could hurt you or this change you're going to make is really difficult.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you as soon as you question a belief enough, you realize there's actually poking quite a bit of holes in it and it's actually no longer has merit anymore.
Yeah.
But that's the key. So I think to kind of add what you're saying is anybody that is in that state that is starting, if you're scared or worried or just like, nah, it sounds stupid, what's saying that? Why are you saying that? Tony Robbins talks about this all the time. Is how do you destroy belief? You ask it questions, or a negative belief, or a limiting belief. You ask it questions until it just can't stand anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a good example if you believed in Santa Claus. Sorry. But, okay, well, have you seen, right? You can just start asking questions, and it's like, then if you do that to kids, you ask enough questions, and they're like, oh, well, you're right. I actually don't know if I should anymore. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it's not actually true. Yeah. So having that same willingness, I think, is really critical. And so there was a part of this too, you talking about journaling. Maybe I want to dive back a little bit and talk about your journaling, why you found it so powerful. Because journaling for me has always been not my first go, but every time I do it, I'm like, oh, man, I didn't know that. Or, oh, you know what? You're right. I did have this. Yeah. And these little nuggets come up that I didn't think were there. So maybe don't explain or just kind of share your experience with journaling, why you liked it.
Yeah. Journaling has really helped me out. To be quite honest, I have fallen off my journaling practice a little bit, but when I need it, it's there and it doesn't cost any money. Yeah. It's just costs your time and your willingness to be open and meet yourself with humility and integrity.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
Journaling has really helped me with that shadow work of asking myself, what am I scared of? What is my limiting belief? Why do I feel imposter syndrome in pursuit of my goals to be better, to, to want to change the world, to do these things, to, be driven by that. And a lot of it comes to that inner child. And that's a huge part of doing this work is inner child work.
Right.
So it's like journaling with my inner child. And it's funny, but a practice that I have, you write a question with your right hand or your dominant hand. And then with your left hand, you answer that question with your inner child, because it's like a kid is writing and it crosses over to your right brain where your unconscious, subconscious mind is, where that inner child wound resides.
Oh, cool. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And that has been profound Like,
really?
yeah, oh yeah, I'll be like writing, and then you'll hit that vein where it's just like, okay, I'm striking gold here, and it's like crying, and emotions are coming through, and it's realizations are popping. It's pretty cool.
That's wild.
Yeah,
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, one of my
I'm gonna try
mentors
that.
said that, and it's like, yeah, like with your non-dominant hand, and
Because when you look at your non-dominant writing, it's like
Yeah.
it looks like a child's doing it.
exactly, and it's amazing because you watch that ego, you watch that voice in your head that gets frustrated, that has the judgment of like, oh, I just want to grab this and finish this off and write.
Why is it taking so long?
Oh,
Why
yeah.
are you so slow?
Yep.
Why is it so messy?
Yep, and it's like
I can already hear myself.
self-parenting, because it's
Right.
like you are showing up as your parents did for you when you were a kid, of like, you're not good enough, what the hell, like, why do you keep messing up? Like, my dad was pretty hard on me when I was a kid, so it's like I was doing this, and I literally caught myself like grab the pen out of my left hand and started writing. I'm like, what am I doing?
Whoa.
Grab it back and just be so patient, compassion, love, and forgiveness and understanding for where you're at when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, like a little kid.
That's so huge, because you know what it is, and I want to touch on it before, is I think of shadow work, and exactly there is your programming. Your subconscious programming is a term that a lot of people use, and I think is so powerful, and I think is under talked about and not enough awareness. So
Yeah.
I read some really good work, and I'm trying to remember his name, but I can't off the top of my head. But he's talking about subconscious programming and how your subconscious is a million times more powerful than your conscious mind. So a good example there is like you literally were like, whoa, what the hell just happened? Your
Yeah.
body is like, no, this isn't right.
So
Not
as
to
far as
mention-
like, I'll just jump
go ahead.
back in, and like with journaling, the power is in the prompts.
Yeah.
Asking yourself powerful questions with
Yes.
that. So, you know, I love ChatGPT. I love going on AI and using it for my own development instead of, you know, all the other million reasons you could do that. So, you know, ask it. I am going on a journey right now. I am going to be doing some inner child work. Can you help me uncover aspects of my shadow that I can work through with powerful journaling prompts? Give me 15 prompts that I can go through. It'll spit them out. So
Right.
that is a really powerful way. And just working with people that have been on the healing journey can help
Yeah.
you through stuff like that. But it's a really good way to bring more awareness to how you're
Yeah.
showing up in the world.
I like that. And you know what? And this is, I had actually the episode we did before, we're talking about AI and how, not to go into too far, but it's just how it needs a heavy hand of a human to actually guide. And the question you asked was very, very specific. And you can go through and look at those questions and go, okay, right, I'm aware enough, I can figure this out. I think the problem is when somebody unaware or unconscious tries to make that decision and go, oh, help me heal my trauma. And it's like, huh? Like, you're going to get absolutely nothing and everything all at once. So after letting the dogs out for a brief moment, no, I think that's really interesting, and like I wanted to touch on what you said is the work is in the prompts, and the gold is in that, and it kind of tied into what I was mentioning before about the subconscious being 95% of your waking day, and only 5% is your conscious mind. And so if we're not aware of those things, and that's where tying back to what you're talking about with maybe you're seeing a lot of people in the construction industry, or at least that's what you noticed and experienced, and I would say that could be a lot of industries, to be honest.
Say, it's pretty much every industry at this point. Like,
Yeah.
I love that idea of the subconscious programming. We think 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah,
80%.
70,000 on average, yeah.
Yeah, right? And like, how many of those are the same ones from yesterday? 80 to 90%? How many of those are negative?
80%.
80 to 90%?
80%.
So many people, they are their own worst enemies.
Yes.
Like, it's so
And
true.
it's terrible and it's you.
Yep.
It's me. It's you pick your favorite celebrity, your favorite whoever. The only difference is they've figured out ways to move past that or focus all their attention or their energy on something that's helped them grow in a certain way. But they've had to have steps and help people walk through that, which is so critical. And this is why I wanted to have a talk like this, is like understanding that, one, we all have it. Two, you need help with it. And three, a coach isn't something that tells you how to run your life. That's none of their business. It's what life do you want, and how can, as I say, my purpose is to pull the best out of you.
Yeah.
What are some of the amazing things about you? What do you want more about your life?
Yeah.
And what are some of the things holding you back?
Right.
And if I can ask the right questions and help you have the realization, because I've had that, you've had that,
Yeah.
and when you have those epiphanies, you're like, oh, this is really cool. Like, wow, I can actually take ownership of my life. There's some of the sessions I went through, and I've shared this before, and I've talked to my wife lots, is stuff that, having conversations about sex. I was super uncomfortable, and I was like, with my partner, I was like, I can't. Because, like, why? Well, I never did before. And previously, oh, well, can't you do that now? Do you think she'll be upset if you do? And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. It doesn't matter, right? But that wasn't her telling me that.
Yeah.
That was me having discovery. So this is why this work is so, everybody needs it. It's kind of like fitness. It's just one more level.
Yeah.
I say this all the time. Who needs personal training? Everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody needs a personal trainer. Everybody needs
I've
fitness.
been saying a lot lately, fitness is a fundamental.
Yes.
If you want to be an optimal human, if you're not prioritizing fitness, I'm sorry, it's not happening.
I wouldn't even be sorry. It's not happening.
Healthy body, healthy mind. A healthy mind is a happy mind.
Yes.
If you hate your body, start there.
Yeah.
And like there's so many different ways that you can get to that optimization, and that's insane that you talk about that part of having that kind of unworthiness, like shying away from being vocal, expressing your truth. And for men, a lot of this work is reclaiming your masculinity.
Yes.
Because when you're operating in that unconscious victim ego, it's toxic masculinity. And that's why toxic masculinity is a thing. It's because men that refuse to do this work, that put on that facade, it is toxic to a degree. So when you do this, it's like breaking down those walls to build them back up from a healthy, divine masculine, healed masculine, where you can be assertive and lead and talk about these things. And women are dying for men to be in a healed masculine proper embodiment of that energy. But with the masculine energy, the law of duality says that we need to work on our feminine energy as well. So that's that nurture, that's that holding space, raw, vulnerable, really meeting yourself with compassion and love. And that is where the toxic masculinity shies away from, because it thinks that, oh, I don't need to do that. I'm not getting things done. I'm not doing work. What's the point? It's like all these deflections that you project to shy away from this. And it's insane how much your life changes when you start going through this process of changing who you are, because you know that there's something so much better on the other side. And one thing that you were saying earlier about kind of, oh, why should I do that? Oh, I'm scared, or what have you. That's not you. That little voice in your mind is not you. You're not your mind. You're not your body. You're the awareness behind all of that. And that was a huge, profound realization on my journey. It's like, I've heard it so many different places, but it really clicked when I read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. He's like, you are the silent witness. You are the awareness. You are the observer behind all the noise. And then he gives this example, like the subject-object relationship. I can perceive this microphone. I can touch it. I can interact with it. That means that I'm not that. Your thoughts are the same thing. You can perceive your thoughts. You can observe your thoughts. That means you're not your thoughts. That means that you're not your beliefs. You're not your emotions. You're not.
You don't have to be if you don't want to be.
And it's just being in that state of the observer, of unpacking, like, And then when you know that, it's like, okay, I'm scared, but do it scared. Do it in the face of fear. Courage doesn't mean you're fearless. It means that you know and acknowledge the fear, but you proceed anyways.
I've said this before, but one of my favorite sayings, because there's a lot there I want to really reel back. is on the other side of fear is a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
So that thing that you're afraid of, and you might not even know that you're afraid of it, or you might say, I'm not afraid of it, I just don't want to do it. When really you are, there is a bit of fear, there is a bit of worry, anxiety, stress, resistance. The other side of that's a better version. And, you talked about, and I'm going to kind of work backwards here, talked about changing yourself. And I think that's where a lot of people get, well, I'm this person, I don't want to change I love who I am. I think of the analogy of like a caterpillar and a butterfly, right? It's like, yeah, you can sit there and be a caterpillar your whole life if you really want to. But is the caterpillar, or the butterfly rather, is just the grown version of, or so the butterfly is the grown version of the caterpillar. And so they are still the same being, just one looks a lot different and can fly, which is pretty friggin' cool. Whereas a caterpillar's got to kind of like inch its way around.
Yeah.
And so I think if that, if anybody's getting resistance, I don't want to change. I mean, think of that mentality, that analogy. And in order for you to get the life you want, you got to change who you are. In order for you to get the life you want, you got to become more than you are, or else you already have it. Whether it's a relationship, the business, the career, the family, the relationship, or the friendships, whatever it is, the money, you need to change. And last thing I was going to say there was the masculinity part is I find that the word toxic masculinity, it's such a buzzword, but it makes sense. I always try to refrain it because sometimes I feel like it's a media buzzword versus I try to break it down even simpler. It's like, well, what is it really? It's hurting people. Healed people heal other people. And so you can be that masculine, strong decision maker, whatever. And I think the point I wanted to add on to what you were saying is that I find men, at least in our society, that aren't healed and haven't dealt with that, will go one of two ways. They go extreme masculine, and no character trait extreme is good. Strength too far is too much. Compassion too far is enabling, right? Like there's you can go too far. But if they are healed in your masculine, now instead of trying to show strength through dominating, you can show strength through bringing up and being confident in who you are, not worried about somebody else saying something about you and having to defend it because you're not worried. Their opinion really doesn't matter to you anyway because you're strong in who you are, and that wound is healed. So somebody poking at it's like, no, I'm good, man. Yeah. Versus if it's a gaping wound cut open and somebody touches it, it hurts. I got to defend it.
Yeah, I'm
triggered. And so the same thing happens with femininity as well. Is women go through the same thing, and you can flip it, or you'll have men that go so far in it because they've been, maybe society said you can't be angry, you can never get upset, you can never show violence, you can never get any of these things that men have done in the past. And so what do? They do the exact opposite and say, oh, it's all about my wife, it's all about happy wife, happy life, or go so far into that way, and they give up all their power.
Yeah.
Because they've had a bad experience, they've had some sort of trauma of some sort around taking ownership or fear. Maybe it's fear then, thinking out loud, it's fear, or it could be fear, that is stopping them from kind of regaining that. Yeah. And I've seen that lots where men giving up their power, giving up their decision-making abilities, giving up their willingness to stand up to people that they love, and not in a negative way of like angry, but just in a way of like, hey, I won't be treated like this anymore. Yeah. I refuse to let anybody treat me like that. And setting that example, and refusing and not defending themselves, because when you can defend yourself in a good way, like a healthy, like here's who I am and here's who I want to be, 100%. It makes it easier to defend other people. Yeah. And I can think of a few people now that I know that I've seen this with. And to be honest, it kind of breaks my heart sometimes, because I'm like, man, where's your power just to say no?
Totally.
Because they've gone so, again, going the other way, they've gone so far in the feminine, and
Right.
and again, not to degrade feminine, I just mean like they've gone so far away from masculine. So I guess
in the wounded,
in the
like you
wounded,
say,
so
there's
much
like two
feeling.
forks in the road. You're either going to be this hyper masculine wounded projection of trying to control others and trying to, you know, change the situation and
Yeah.
you know, assert your dominance,
Yeah, through
or
any
you're
way
going to be
you can.
so passive, a people pleaser. You're not going to know how to say no. And I think what you were pointing at that whole time is effective boundary setting.
Yeah.
That is so powerful with this work. When you
Yes.
take your power back, it's like, holy shit, I can say no.
Yeah.
And when
it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. And when you
Yeah.
realize that what other people, how they react to you when you establish your boundaries,
Yeah.
that's out of your control.
Yes.
And
Yes.
part of stoicism, everything that's outside of your control,
Yeah.
gone with the wind.
I love
you
it.
have to surrender to it, because if you give your time and energy and place your level of well-being on things that you can't control, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yes, it's like you said it before, people pleaser. It's trying to,
Yeah.
I think of the people that I know, it's, well, if I said this and do this, then that person will be upset. Can you control they can be upset?
Yeah.
Oh, and you start asking those questions, because that's a belief, and they start asking those questions, and then pretty soon they're like, wait a minute, I can say no to this person. If they're upset, that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it out of malice. And sometimes, so if anybody is listening that hasn't said that yet, I always say
That's the thing.
pre-frame.
Yeah.
Pre-frame the conversation. Hey, look, I love you. You know, let's say if it's a relationship with a woman. I love you and our relationship, and I love our relationship. I want to continue having this relationship with you. I'm saying this because I want to have this relationship with you.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I think it's going to fester and make things worse.
Yeah.
I will not be, having said that, I will not allow you to treat me like this. And it can go either way,
Yeah.
man or woman. You can't treat me like that anymore. That's a boundary there that you're crossing. And I need you to respect that. You can't control how they react. All you can do is control how you react and set that boundary and just leave it. I've done this in my relationship, had it done to me, and did it with my wife.
Right.
And it was 2 moments that were scary as fuck. Like, I was like, oh my God, I have to do this though, because I've done that. I've done where I didn't.
Yeah.
I just let it go.
Yeah.
And then got walked on. And I let that happen. That's the worst thing that
And
I
then
had
you
to.
become resentful.
And then
bottle it.
it's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Exactly what happened. I can't blame that person because I let it happen.
Yeah.
And so when I had that conversation with my wife, it was like, hey, look, like, I will not allow you to treat me like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, sitting there thinking like, hey, this is just what it is, and I have to say it, and that's that.
Yeah.
And I said it, and I even pre-framed it. I'm saying this because I don't want this to resent and build up, but you cannot treat me like this. Our relationship got so much better after she was a bit in tears. Like, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. I didn't even know that's how you felt. And I'm not saying it because she just listened and obeyed. It was like, no.
You had a conscious conversation about conflict
Yes.
resolution and boundaries, and
And
for
we
a lot
both
of
said,
men-
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I think something really important that I want to jump in and say that in my past relationships, I thought that I had to speak my mind and establish boundaries in the moment of conflict. But one thing that you have to really honor and realize is that if you want to do this effectively with your partner, establish your boundaries while you're in a regulated state.
Yeah.
Because if
Yes.
you're
Not in the moment.
no. Well, if you have the
Yeah.
regulation capabilities, but chances are, if you're in the middle of this when you're triggered, it's like you can't see a reflection of a pot of boiling water.
Yeah.
All you see is red,
That's a good point.
and it's just fire, right? And
Yeah, I like that
So
analogy.
being able to regulate and then meet each other where you're at and just be like, look, this is my truth. This is where I'm at. And that component of self-regulation, I haven't even touched on it, but I think that is absolutely crucial
Yeah.
in order to become this version of yourself that you seek.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know how to regulate your emotions, which is directly related to your nervous system, and I'm sure a lot of guys would be like, what does that even mean? Like, what is regulating your nervous system? That means your breath.
Yeah.
Coming back to center, being grounded, calm,
Yeah.
secure, and
Yep.
safe in your body.
Yep.
Because when you feel that agitation, that anxiety, all of that kind of fluttery arousal state that we get ourselves into when we're unconscious, when we're either ruminating in the past or projecting and worrying about the future, right? If you're on that pendulum swing, you need to slow that down until you can ground down fully into the present moment.
Yes.
And that has been a superpower that I have attained while doing this work. And I keep referencing doing the work. Like people say
practice.
All
it's
the
a
time.
practice.
It's like the hub is doing the work. All these spokes on the wheel, it's like meditation, breathwork, journaling, regulatory practices, self-awareness,
goal setting, whatever.
All of those different aspects that help you in that moment of being able to respond instead of react. That's where your power lies. And if you're a reactive man that hasn't done this work, you are very volatile. You're going to be somebody that people have a hard time trusting because of how you show up, and you blow up, and people don't really want to be around that type of energy. And nowadays, with the age of information, if you're not doing this work, it is a matter of ignorance. Like you have nothing outside of yourself to blame your state on if you're getting flustered and reactive and freaking out like that. Like, shame on you for not doing better, but also you can only do as good as the level of consciousness that you're at. So it's like Jordan Peterson says, if you want to change your life, just sit on the edge of your bed and ask yourself, where am I right now? What would I change? Why would I change it? Should I change it? Like going through those questions of like just completely objective analysis of how you're showing up in your life. One quick thing I'll say too, it's like being able to observe your life objectively through the actions that you're taking, instead of placing the story on, oh, well, I do this because of that. It's like, no, what actions are you taking to better yourself? Are you waking up? Are you having a quiet practice where you sit in contemplation, you meditate? Are you doing the cold showers? Are you doing the journaling? Are you eating healthy? Are you working out? Are you, doing all these things? Well, if you're not, then you can't make excuses. It's like, yes or no. Are you doing it or are you not doing it? If you're not doing it, why are you not doing it? If you're not doing it and you want to change and you want to do better, what are the reasons why you want to do it? Like all of this stuff that we work through as coaches to help people. And, I really wanted to touch on that aspect of mentorship too, like having mentors while you're doing this work and while you're in that phase of being in the chrysalis, while you're turning into this new version of yourself. It's uncomfortable. It's scary. And do your best to just do your best and remove those expectations. It takes as long as it takes. And it's going to look how it's going to look. Like, don't think it needs to be a certain way. And one thing too, it's like, oh, I'm healed now. I'm done the work. There is no finish line. This is the infinite game. It's a life's work. There's always going to be opportunities for growth and that are going to challenge you, and that you're going to get that medicine at certain times where it's like, I don't want that right now. But you swallow it and you go, okay, I can see. And relationships are great for that because it's a mirror for us men.
Totally.
And it challenges you in a way that is usually optimal for your growth, unless you're with a narcissistic, unconscious partner that is projecting all their shit on you, and then that's not fair and that's not healthy.
Totally.
But being in a partnership where you're both conscious and you're both wanting to be better and have those hard conversations where it's constructive criticism and then you're figuring things out is powerful.
Absolutely. It's something I was going to mention there, and it's one of my favorite sayings. And to kind of go back to the story there of what you were talking about, was in relationships, one of my favorite sayings is, when the heart is open, tread softly. So to go back to what you said before, because that in that moment, it's heated. The heart, maybe let's say your partner is upset and they're telling you all their emotions and how they're feeling, especially for men. You're hearing all these emotions. Sometimes you're like, I don't even know what that means. If you freak out and say something like that, close them down. They're going to close down even further. And then that is regressing the relationship much further, which is a mistake that I've made. And so for me, it's always been, okay, yes, as you said, set those boundaries. But in that relationship, you set them, as you said, when you're calm and you're regulated. And then also when that moment comes when they're expressing, it's just, you just leave it. The best thing to do is do nothing sometimes and just nod and be like, thank you. And just tread as slowly and quietly and softly as you can in a good way. And then this is talking about what we talked before is, that is that feminine energy aspect of just feeling. And I don't even say you have to go feminine. I would say you have to recognize that it's there, see it and respect it, and be like, right, there it is there. Here it is. Here's this feminine, this beautiful energy, this beautiful woman that I have. I just need to sit with it and just be good with it being where it is. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to change it. And as you said before, it's a great relationship, great like that to learn, because not only are you learning and expanding who you are and be able to sympathize with that and understand that and learn, but it is a place to enhance those good emotions, right?
One thing I want to say in regards to that feminine and masculine energy, feminine and masculine energy is in all things, as above, so below. It's an energy. It's not a gender.
Yeah.
So divorcing the meaning from what that feminine energy is related to in your mind, because you have masculine and feminine energy within you, whether you're a man or a woman. It's in cells, it's in everything, and it's like the yin and the yang. And so, because you said, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be in that feminine energy, but what it is, it's like part of that healing is honoring the whole aspect. So it's not like, oh, I'm in my feminine energy, that means I'm being girly. It's not like that. It's just the opposite aspect of positive and negative.
Yes.
Right? So
I absolutely love that. And so I did want to talk a little bit, we didn't even get to yet, but some of the work you're doing, you have a men's group, because all this stuff we're talking was amazing. And as you said before, you need a coach, you need somebody there to help you walk through this. I couldn't agree more, because it is a challenging thing, because it's going to look different for everybody, because things are going to come up, you're not going to know what to do, you're going to get these curveballs thrown your way, as life does. And to be honest, that's where we learn the most from, and really learn who we are and who we can be. I always give the analogy of challenges are like weights in the gym. If you lifted the same weight all the time, you're not going to get any stronger. Same thing here. Don't wish for no problems, wish for bigger problems, or rather the strength to handle bigger problems. So one of the things you're mentioning was the modalities you use is a men's group. So maybe you want to share on that a little bit, because we talked about earlier, men not opening up enough, talking about it. So what does that actually look like? What's the reality of it, and what have you noticed from it?
This lights me up, because this men's group that I've been a part of, it's changed my life in the best way possible. I guess to start out with the start of that journey with my last relationship, it was challenging, and there were a lot of times where I was not showing up as that king that I wanted to be. I wanted a queen, but I was a hurt little boy projecting. And I was knee deep in my healing journey. But I would still find myself getting so triggered that I was unrecognizable. And I look back and, there's still aspects of shame through how I shown up, but I'm working through that. I'm forgiving myself and processing that. And back in beginning of this year, we had a fight, and I remember just running upstairs. We were house sitting, and she comes upstairs after chatting with her friend, and she's like, look, I see the work that you're doing. I know that you are trying, but you need to get outside of yourself to have somebody help you with this, because you can only go so far by yourself with anything in life. And I really thought that I could take all this on by myself, of even though I had evolved my spirituality, I still had this spiritual ego. It's like, oh yeah, no, I can handle this. So she kind of gave me an ultimatum, and she's like, figure this stuff out, because I don't want to be here if you're not going to take that next step. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I'm here for it. So I went to therapy, and it was powerful, but it's not necessarily that I needed to talk one-on-one with somebody what I needed was a community. And I'm not saying that therapy's not great, because it is, and it's helped me a lot, but how profound men's group has been for me blows talk therapy out of the water. And
Well,
this is my own personal experience, so
yeah.
eat the chicken, spit out the bones, like, do what you will with that.
That one, I like that.
And she just challenged me to do better, to show up, and I'm like, okay, what can I do? And I was at this this business meeting with one of the guys that owns the wellness center in town in Salmon Arm there, and I walk in and I see this guy, and he just has this presence to him, and he's got like tattoos, and he's got a big crystal on his neck. I'm like, who is this guy? And I walk up to him and just start talking to him, and I'm like, are you Craig Johansson? He's like, yeah, I am. I'm like, you run the Confidants, the men's group in town? He's like, yep. I'm like, I've been waiting for this interaction. And it's funny how synchronistic certain events are in our path, where things just happen. It seems like a coincidence. There's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah.
As far as I believe, man, everything is in divine timing. And so I was like, oh, you run the men's group. Well, I'm Brody. This is my story. And started talking about all these things. And he saw me just winding up like a top. And he just stops me and he puts his hand on my heart. And he's a Reiki master, so he does energy work and all this stuff. And it literally felt like a hot plate on my chest. And he puts his other hand on my shoulder, and he's like, it's okay. We've got time. We've got time to catch up, brother. You made it. You're safe. And he pulls me in, gives me a hug, and I just started bawling. It was insane. I was like, I just met this guy 2 minutes ago, and I'm crying on his shoulder. What is going on? It was so powerful. And and that was like on a Monday. And he's like, am I going to see you on Thursday night? I said, you betcha. Yeah. And so I show up to the Hospice Society in Salmon Arm, where they do the men's group. It's every Thursday, 7 p.m. Yeah. And, man, I was so anxious. I was so uncomfortable to be there. And usually it goes in a clockwise formation. And Craig starts out with the share, and there's always like a value or a lesson. Sometimes it's just an open conversation where we just talk about what's going on. But 90% of the time there's a theme. And so they're talking, can't even remember what it was that day because I was so in my head, and it starts going around, and there's probably 15 or 16 guys, and it gets to me, and I remember my buddy Sean sharing before me, and I'm like, palms are sweaty, just like looking down at the ground. What did I do? Why am I here? Maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I should just get up and go. That voice we're talking about is just going crazy. And I'm like, okay, just shut up. Just observe. Be here. Be okay. It's fine. Yeah. Talking stick gets to me because that's the power of having that group. You get you get this stick, and it's like when you have the talking stick, somebody can offer something, but kind of the theme is, it's like when somebody has that thing, you don't interrupt. You're there to hold space, no judgment, just be there to listen. And it gets to me, I'm like, well, here we go. And I just started sharing, and I opened up about my whole experience of, my grandpa passing, and this sexual trauma that I had when I was 7, and then my cousin committed suicide last year, and it was a really tough thing for me to go through, and in the process of that, there's another big trauma that happened when I was a kid, and I'm like, holy shit. All of these moments where it's like these big tower moments, and everything seems like it's crumbling away from underneath you. And just sharing my journey of like talking about my trauma in front of these guys, and being so uncomfortable that I couldn't even like look people in the eye. I'm just staring at the ground, and I'd look up, and all of these guys are just locked eyes on me. Yeah. It was so uncomfortable for me to be in that space of having this container of men hold space for me. I've never experienced that up until that point, and so many men don't even know what that's like. Yep. Because it's not like I could have this really raw, vulnerable, hard conversation with my buddies on a Friday, drinking beers, talking about life. No. You just don't open up about that stuff because it's kind of taboo, even though it's 2024. There's still these tough conversations that aren't being had. And the few times that I did kind of open up to my buddies, it's like they didn't even know how to receive me. They didn't have the tools to be able to actually hold space for me.
Yeah.
And so I just retreated. I'm like, oh, whatever. I'll just pull back and won't talk about this stuff. And then through this men's group, I am such an advocate for this work now, because going there and getting that off my chest, and like as I'm sharing, I'm breaking down, I'm crying. Like there was like probably 2 or 3 times where I had to like catch myself, like collect and keep going and share. And man, like the feeling of gratitude and love that I had afterwards of these guys coming up and giving me hugs and like wow,
that's
man,
really cool.
I'm so proud of you. Like I'm so proud of you.
That's really
and,
cool.
I get tingles as I'm talking.
Yeah. I can feel it.
There's so many guys that just don't have that, and they're suffering in silence, and there's men out there that are taking their lives because they don't have the tools and the community in their life to talk about these things that they're going through.
Yeah, and that
breaks my heart.
That's the worst part of me when you look at statistics, men versus women in suicide. It's like 2 to 1, 3 to 1, maybe more actually. It's crazy on all age groups. And men, in terms of our gifts, we're good doers. So when there's the new doing needs to be done, it's normally a guy that steps in. It's just how it is, or at least how it has been. And there's gifts to that, and it's a good thing. There's a lot of good that comes from that. On the flip side, it's the feeling, the being that we struggle with. I know I've struggled with, and my wife constantly is reminding me. I did that the other day where I was like, okay, we gotta go. Her brother's here, and I'm like, oh, we gotta go. And she's like, why do we hurry up out of there? And I was like, oh, we had to go. Go do what? We had to go to Costco. Why? Well, because we got to go to Costco. Do we have time? And I was like, oh my God, you're right. So my point there is like constantly trying to do versus just being able to sit and be. And I think that's the real value of, or big value of that, is just other men saying, hey, it's okay. Like, it's okay that this happened to you, or that you're talking about it, that you're feeling this way. It's okay that you're experiencing this, that this is uncomfortable. Yeah. We've all been there. And so I've never experienced it, but I know my wife has, and we've talked about it a lot. She shared of like some of the trauma and like anxiety and that sort of stuff. If you've ever gone through that, knowing other people have gone through that same feeling, I'm not the only one. And when that's hell is when you're alone in those feelings. But when you have other people there, it's like, oh, this isn't, it still sucks. But now I got, especially when it's a room full of guys that have my back. Yeah. Right? So I think of the masculine energy and how good that would feel, because a lot of men, or masculine energy, is protecting, defending, knowing that you have not just one person has your back, but whole team that's got your back. Yeah. That's got to feel really good. And then that energy or just that your soul, your child, all those parts that you can just go like, oh, we're okay. I got a whole team behind me. And this is why, for me, I've loved sports so much, especially football. It was because, in my opinion, it's the ultimate team sport. Yeah. You need 11 guys on the field, depending on which game you play, 12 or 11. But either way, you need everybody in the field doing that. And so my point there is, with that group, it's like you have a whole team of guys with experiences that are there just to, and that's what it seems, just to be like, hey, we got you. We got your back. We can't fix it. But even just knowing that, I think, is so wonderful and so powerful.
Yeah. And I've been going since middle of February.
Great, yeah.
End of February, and man, the ripple effect that it's had on my life, and the conversations I've had, and the people I've inspired, and the men that have seen my videos, because I like posting content about it and talking about it, and I come out of there feeling charged. Every time it fills my cup, and I come out buzzing.
That's huge.
And you have to know that when you're contributing to something like that, there's going to be men in there that have some crazy things to share. And just going in there without expectations, with no judgment, just holding space and meeting them where they're at, it is amazing. Like, we had a couple guys come in, new guys, just a few weeks ago, and I won't share their story because it's not mine to share, but the things that they were going through, I'm like, my problems are like an anthill, and they're like, I don't know how to keep carrying on. I don't know how to. Every day I think about killing myself, and I'm like, holy shit. I was like holding back tears, man. Like, just this guy sharing his story and just feeling the pain and the suffering that he was in. Like, it just broke my heart. And afterwards I went up and gave him the biggest hug, and I'm like, dude, you made it. Like, you're here. Like, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You only need to see your next step. And just be in your heart, practice forgiveness. And I sent him some breath works and some meditations.
Awesome. I love that.
And helped him, and he's like, dude, thank you so much. And like seeing the transformation on him in just
warms
a couple
my heart
weeks.
hearing that.
And
that's
like,
cool.
I really try to just be that helper and to be that lighthouse. And I shared this last week.
That resonates with me.
Yeah, because like, I've been in the storm. I've been out in the pitch black, stormy seas, feeling like I'm in a cardboard rowboat with dragons trying to shoot me down.
This is terrible. Who made a cardboard boat for me? This is awful.
Like, I thought I had at least a canoe. And just like that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, and being like, I might as well just jump overboard because there's no way I'm getting out of this. But some way, somehow, you are guided by unseen forces, and you always make it to where you need to go as long as you don't give up. And one thing that I noticed that I was doing when I started doing this work, I went through a profound transformation and realization in a very short period of time. I went through a massive awakening and realizing how much I was struggling, and had this new lease on life, and was driven by all this potential and all of this grandiose, like, holy, this like wonderment. It was like I had this childlike excitement back again. But what I didn't realize is that I was running around trying to be a savior and trying to help everybody and trying to point out, oh, you're doing this, well, if only you did this, your life would be so much better. So it's like you kind of develop a savior complex. It's like a spiritual trap on the ladder of
you go
ascension.
So far that way that you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm actually making this worse.
And so now it's like, having done this work and knowing who I am and being grounded and embodied in that frequency and that vibration and that energy, it's like, I am this lighthouse. I'm not running around with this high power flashlight, like trying to shine people out of the dark. It's like, I'm up here. If you're out in the storm, I'm casting this to you. If you see this, come towards me and I'll help you. But I need to see that desire. I need to see you want to do this work, because I'm not just going to run around trying to save everybody, because eventually you're pouring from an empty cup and you're going to burn the hell out. And part of this work, it's like, you got to put on your oxygen mask before you help other people. You have to fill your cup before it overflows for the rest of the people in your life.
I 100% agree. And that's a really, not to get biblical, but there's a really great scripture, and I heard a sales guy saying that wasn't really religious or Christian, but I thought it was so wonderful. And it was, the sheep hear the shepherd's voice. And so just having that understanding that's like, right, your message isn't for everybody. And the humility of like, you're right, you're not a savior, and nobody is. You're a lighthouse, and you have a call that you're like, hey, I'm here. So if you're in this area, you're in this ocean, you're in this, stormy weather, I'm here. If you need my help, I can't run. What do you do with the lighthouse? Lighthouse, I think, is kind of not humble, but I wouldn't say it was this grandeur thing, but just hey, I'm here to help. It's the same thing with the shepherds. I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. I'm here to be there when you need it. I can't help everybody because it's impossible. Right. And that I totally know what you're saying there. I totally agree. And I love that you use the analogy of a lighthouse, because that was 2 years ago when I was meditating. I had, and talking about, I didn't use psilocybin, I used a little bit of THC, but that actually helped me with the meditation I had and the vision I had myself as being a lighthouse for other people. And the way I like to word is, I like to bring out the best in people, bring out the best version of themselves, because we have so many wonderful gifts that we just hide because we're scared, fear, anxiety, worry, ego, whatever. And so the fact you said that, I thought was like, oh man, I was like, that's why we needed to sit down and have this conversation. And I love your story. I'm so glad you're able to share. Is there any parting wisdom you had to have on anybody that's listening that, let's say, that is listening and just kind of on the outskirts looking in and just watching, going, what is this all about? What would be your like first steps for somebody like that wants to explore it?
Meet yourself where you're at. And if you're thinking about it, just do it. Seek out these communities around you of people who are creating containers of safety, because it'll change your life.
Yeah.
There's women's circles, there's men's groups, and when you're part of that men's group, there's men's retreats, there's drumming circles, there's breathwork events, there's new personal relationships with men who are on the healing journey that inspire you to be a better man.
Yep.
And part of me being a man and being in a men's group and holding space and support for other men, I've heard people say, well, what about, the LGBTQ community and those people who are kind of in that they're not a biological man, but they identify as a man. If there's a men's group and you attack that men's group, there's probably a community and a space for you to go and feel heard and to feel safe.
There is.
And it's like, I use this analogy. It's like, if you show up to a class that teaches German and you get mad at them because they're not teaching Spanish, well, go to a Spanish class.
Yeah.
Leave the German class alone.
Yep.
And so
That's a good point.
With the men's group, we know why we're doing that. And it's for men who are men, who want to be better men, who want to heal, to show up as more of that divine masculine figure in their life, of being a positive, healed, strong role model for their partner, for their kids, for breaking generational cycles of trauma and programming and changing the future for not only them, but generations to come.
Yes.
And so I think that don't do this work for yourself. Do this for what's to come and the people around you, because you have no idea what the 33rd ripple effect of the actions that you take. And so just meet yourself where you're at, have the awareness, and try to unpack how you're showing up in your life so you can formulate a plan of what you want to change and who you want to become. Analyze the things that are holding you back, develop a plan, do the necessary work required to remove that emotional charge, to remove those binds and the shackles that are holding you down, because limiting beliefs are illusory. And then just start taking consistent action towards being that person that you want to be in the world. And if you are upset that you're not surrounded by people who are that version of how you want to show up in the world, well, just start doing that. Start being the change you want to see in the world.
Yes.
And embodying that energy. And then just know that when you start doing this work, the crab in the bucket analogy, people in your life are going to want to pull you back down to their level of being a victim, being in their ego, being in that fear, shame, guilt, judgment, worry. The scale of consciousness by David Hawkins is powerful, because it shows you, as you transcend that third dimension, you get into the fourth, fifth, all the way up to 12th dimension, your inner light, your wisdom, that heart energy, you're able to speak your truth, you're able to be more of that Christ energy, like the least among you can do as I have, and even more. Like we're all so powerful, but we limit ourselves immensely because of these societal conditioned structures. And there's not medicine on the TV, on the media. Like, be careful of what you're consuming, and start consuming more positive content. Start consuming more inspirational personal development. Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton. There's so many figures out there that help with this stuff. Ed
Brody.
Myself included. I am wanting to be one of those thought leaders, one of those people that are inspiring others to change. And part of my work is like owning that and being like, you know what? Yeah, my message isn't for everyone. And that's okay. Because as you step more into your authenticity, naturally you're going to be more polarizing. The people that don't resonate with you are going to really throw rocks at you and try to belittle you and try to knock you off of this.
It means you're on the right path.
Yeah, but the people that do resonate with you are going to be like, wow, like I really like what this guy's saying.
I've heard that from a few people. It's like when you know you're on the right path and you're starting to get hate. And I mean that like a general sense. I think of, not that it was a bunch, but I did one clip and it had a bunch of views. It was like, wow, this is crazy. It was like triple the other ones.
Yeah.
And it was talking about masculinity, and there was like tons of people that liked it and whatever. But there was a few, probably a handful of people that were like, oh, casting their arrows, and trolling. And I went, oh man, I started trying to think of defending him. Like, no, wait, this is like good. Like, this means we're on the right track.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm really grateful to be on this path and to be a role model and an advocate for doing this stuff and getting uncomfortable and changing the story of what it means to be a man and how men show up in the world, and that you can do this work and still be a very masculine man, even though you cry and you talk about your feelings and you talk about the things that you're struggling with.
It's okay.
Absolutely. Like I'm a big guy. I go to the gym. I have this presence with me. But when people realize my ability to hold space and be soft and have empathy and meet people with that, they're like, wow, you're emotionally intelligent. That's interesting.
Emotionally fit.
Right, man. That's what it's all about. And so
how can people find you if they do want to reach out?
Yeah, so Instagram, bhens96, I'm on there. I also have my business on there. There's a link, Quantum Mind Body Wholeness, for my coaching. As we move into winter, I'm going to be stepping up my awareness and energy towards that. Perfect. And scaling that, getting more content out there.
Awesome.
Brody Henry on Facebook. I'm probably going to be starting a podcast and YouTube channel here pretty soon. So
perfect.
Super excited about that. And if you're struggling and you don't know how to talk about it, just reach out, send me a message. I'm all ears.
I love that.
And strength in numbers, man.
Absolutely.
I really do believe that. So if you're struggling in silence, like, just please reach out, do something, because you don't need to do it alone.
I love that. Thank you so much, man. Dude, you killed it. That was great. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to do that. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Please share, because that's what helps this podcast grow and be able to reach more people. And why wouldn't you want to share something like that with somebody if you really enjoyed it? If you haven't yet, I would also encourage you to go to lifepurposely.ca. My wonderful wife, Emily, sends out weekly content to help you improve your life and to think differently and to make wonderful changes that can impact your life forever. So thank you again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.